During the whole of a dull, dark, and resoundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself, as the shades of evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul. I finally forced myself to ride on to the house. The closer I got, the more abominable became this feeling of unutterable depression. I met my horse, and I entered to be greeted by my old schoolmate, Roderick Usher. I gazed upon him with a feeling half of pity, half of awe. Sure, never before so terribly altered in so brief a period as had Roderick Usher. Finally, he spoke of the object of my visit, for I had traveled far at his very earnest request to be with him in his gloomy hereditary castle. He mentioned his earnest desire to see me, and of the solace he expected me to afford him. He entered at some length into what he conceived to be the nature of his malady. It was, he said, a constitutional and a family evil, and one for which he despaired to find a remedy. It was a fear, an uncontrollable fear, an oppressive gloom which pervaded his soul. It was, I concluded, a form of hereditary melancholia, which was slowly driving him out of his senses. Moreover, to accentuate the symptoms, was his avowed manner of living. He never at any time left the house for some indefinable fear of the tarn or marsh which surrounded the castle. Moreover, he was grieved with the long-continued illness and closely approaching death of a tenderly beloved sister, the Lady Madeline, his sole companion for long years, his last and only relative. Her death would leave him the last of the ancient race of the Ushers. For several days I was busy in earnest endeavors to alleviate the melancholy of my friend. We painted and read together, or I listened as if in a dream to the wild improvisations of his squeaking guitar. I shall always remember the many solemn hours I spent trying to persuade him to return to a civilized world with me. But his fear, his ungrounded yet omnipresent fear, held him tenaciously to the place of his birth. One morning, with an unnatural firmness, Roderick abruptly informed me that the Lady Madeline was no more, that the strange disease had claimed her at last. Before I could state my profound sorrow at this ghastly news, he stated his intention of preserving her corpse for a fortnight before the final burial in one of the numerous vaults within the main walls of the building. So at his request, I personally aided in the arrangements for the temporary entombment. The body having been encoffined, we two alone bore it to its rest. The vault in which we placed it was small, damp. It was more of a dungeon than a vault, a dungeon which had most likely seen many horrors in the past centuries. We opened the door, a massive iron gate which was so immensely heavy that it caused an unusually sharp grating sound as it moved on its hinges. Once inside, we placed our mournful burden upon trestles, and partially turned aside the yet unscrewed lid of the coffin, looking upon the young face of the Lady Madeline. The disease had left the mockery of a faint blush upon the bosom and the face, and that suspiciously lingering smile upon the lip which is so terrible in death. We replaced the lid and closed the door of iron. We made our way with toil into the scarcely less gloomy apartments of the upper portion of the house. For the next week, Usher was strange. I saw him gazing upon vacancy for long hours in an attitude of the profoundest attention, as if listening to some imaginary sounds. It was no wonder that his condition terrified, that it infected me. I felt creeping upon me by slow yet uncertain degrees the wild influences of his fantastic yet impressive superstitions. It was more than a week after we had placed the Lady Madeline within the vault that he burst into my room late one night. He stared about the room in silence for a moment, and then he abruptly turned to me and he said, "You have not seen it? You have not seen it? Oh, but you shall, you shall!" And so speaking, he hurried to one of the windows and threw it open to the storm. The fury of the entering gust nearly lifted us from our feet. A whirlwind had apparently centered around the castle, blowing wildly, raising a tremendous noise. The clouds were exceedingly dense and low, so low that they touched the turrets of the house. Yet in all of this there was a light. Under the surfaces of the huge masses of vapor which swept around madly was an unnatural light of a faintly luminous phosphorescence which paled everything in a ghastly, unnatural yellow. It rose from the stagnant swamp which surrounded the castle. I closed the window, and then I told Usher I would read to him from one of his favorite volumes. This I did. But as I read, Roderick sat in a chair beside me. He rocked from side to side with a gentle yet constant and uniform sway. And as I read, I thought I heard strange scraping noises coming from the inner parts of the house. Becoming more unnerved, I leaped to my feet, but the measured rocking movement of Usher was undisturbed. But as I placed my hand upon his shoulder, there came a strong shudder over his whole body. A sickly smile quivered about his lips, and I saw that he spoke in a low, hurried, and gibbering murmur, as if unconscious of my presence. Bending closely over him, I understood the hideous import of his words. Hear it. Hear the noise from the vault below. Yes, I hear it, and have heard it long, many minutes, many hours, many days have I heard it, yet I dared not speak. I tell you, old friend, we have put her in a living tomb. Roderick, what are you saying? Yes, I heard them many days ago, yet I dare not speak. Have you not heard the rending of her coffin, and the grating of the iron hinges of her prison, and her struggles within the archway of the vault? Roderick, do you mean the Lady Madeline? Yes, where shall I go? She will be here soon. She'll scold me for my haste in burying her. She'll be here. Have I not heard her footsteps on the stair? Do I not hear that heavy and horrible beating of her heart? No! No, she's just outside the door! Just outside the door! As if in the superhuman energy of his utterance, there had been found the potency of magic. The huge antique panels of the door swung slowly back. There was the Lady Madeline of Usher. There was blood upon her white robes, and the evidence of some bitter struggle upon every portion of her emaciated frame. For a moment she remained trembling and reeling to and fro upon the threshold, and then with deliberate, slow steps, she walked toward her brother, who stood petrified with fear. Finally, with a low, moaning cry, she fell heavily upon Roderick, and in her final death agonies, bore him to the floor a corpse, and a victim to the terrors he had anticipated. From that chamber of the dead and from the mansion I ran with all my strength. The storm was blinding in its fury. I ran out over the old causeway, crossing the swamp, and as I did, I suddenly heard a tremendous shock. I turned to see what caused it. God in heaven! The great building actually divided in two. Something blinding burst in the center of the castle, and it came tumbling down. The mighty walls burst into a million pieces. There was a long, tumultuous shouting sound, like the voice of 1,000 waters. And the deep and dank tarn at my feet closed sullenly and silently over the fragments of the house of Usher.